It has been a controversial practice in Iceland for years, as they have terminated pregnancies after a test shows a higher risk for Down syndrome. We all know that many of those tests have false positives in them in the early stages of pregnancy. So Iceland now has a 100% termination rate after the screening indicates that, compared to the United States, which has a rate of 67%. It is a statistic that the Vatican is now speaking out about. They would like to see that number drop to zero, of course. Earlier this week, the Holy See sent parents of children with Down syndrome to a conference at the United Nations, calling out countries like Iceland and the United States, noting that the U.S. has laws that protect the eggs of bald eagles and sea turtles, but none to protect children who are born with Down syndrome. Dr. Gina Loudon, psychology expert and creator of the nonprofit They All Have Names, to help families adopt children like her son Samuel, who has Down syndrome. She's devoted a huge part of her life to this and many other things. Gina, good to see you tonight. Thank you very much for being here. I think we have a picture of your son Samuel, who is beautiful, up on the screen right now. And it's also worth pointing out that the Gerber baby this year, for the very first time, is a baby who was born with Down syndrome. There he is. There's little Lucas, who is adorable. And that's a pretty strong statement on their part, Gina.
It really is. We also had a Miss USA contestant this year that was that had Down syndrome. She's beautiful. People with Down syndrome are accomplishing major things, Martha, and that's why I'm so glad that you're covering this story, and also that FoxNews.com printed my op-ed today on all of this, because this story is really culminating in what is sort of a cultural clash when we are talking in terms of eradication of an entire group of people that do nothing, inflict no harm. Name one time where you've ever heard of anyone with Down syndrome hurting anyone else, right? It doesn't happen. And yet we're talking about eradicating them. We talk about eradicating pests from our house. We talk about eradicating deadly diseases. We don't talk about eradicating people. You don't have to be Catholic to be pro-life and realize that adoption, like my family and I enjoy with my son Samuel, is a much better option than abortion, or certainly any sort of eradication.
You know, one of the things that has, I think, promoted this in some ways are these all the testing that's done on children. Right. You know, when you are pregnant, you have an AFP test. I had one that came back that indicated that perhaps the child might develop into a child with Down syndrome. It didn't happen. However, that's the stage at which so many people are making this choice. And I now know a lot of people don't even have these tests anymore because they don't want that information, because it's not going to change how they feel about it. But it really is, it's so sad when you think about the fact that even someone who, you know, I mean, I can't imagine why anybody wouldn't want to welcome a Down baby into their lives, but that those positives are often false to begin with.
Let me speak to those families out there who have a test that comes back that's positive. The lady that had my son and did give him life after she had planned to abort him, actually, more than one time, she and I are very close friends now, and I can tell you, she would tell you, it's the best choice she ever made to give him life. I was in line for 10 years to adopt Samuel, because most of the people who have a child with Down syndrome wanted to have a child with Down syndrome, Martha. And so what happens is families like mine were waiting for years to try to adopt a child with Down syndrome. There are families out there waiting, and I personally invite anyone who is facing this situation and doesn't want to parent the child to contact us. We understand that everybody has a different walk of life, but I can tell you that the joy that is wrapped up in our son Samuel and the things that he teaches us as a family every day have made my family stronger and better and more faithful, frankly.
How many kids do you have, Gina?
I have 5 children.
You're a busy lady. I have
and
a lot
they would
of
all
respect
say the same thing. They would all say the same thing, Martha, that he's the joy, he's the smile. We call him our belly laugh, because that's really what Samuel is.
Thank you, Dr. Gina Loudon. Always good to see you. Thanks for being here tonight.
Thanks.
So coming up next, a very interesting story.